All right, we'd like to welcome on our next guest. He is currently a Defensive Quality Control Analyst for Northwestern, just up the street from us. We got Kevin Koch. That's a Koch.
Yes.
Kevin,
Nice.
how you doing, brother? Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight, man.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you guys letting me come on.
Yeah, of course. If it weren't for the unfortunate circumstance, you could have been our first in-person interview, which would have been nice.
Yeah, we all got to make adjustments nowadays, but hopefully, maybe we'll have a round 2 one day when in 2021 or something, and we can all get together.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you're from Illinois, obviously. We've learned that you're a Sox fan now, which is cool. Totally fine. But you did play some football up in Minnesota, and you're a quarterback. What was it like playing quarterback all the way into November in the Minnesota cold?
It was cold. I was up at Minnesota State Moore, so that's actually 4 hours north of the Twin Cities. I know you guys are familiar, obviously, but honestly, probably we did have some cold games, obviously in November, but probably the worst part of our north was like off-season training, to where you got your 6 a.m. workouts and you live 6 blocks away and you don't have a car, so you're to your facility at like 5 a.m. and like 25 below degree weather.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's the winter conditioning that really gets it. It's not so much the season. You can handle that. It's the February 20th and you're like starting winter ball and it's negative 60 outside.
Exactly. And it's like you almost kind of question what you're doing, right? And somehow I think your teammates are walking with you and you guys just kind of figure out together. But yeah, it's definitely cold, but I had a great time up there.
Did you guys have an indoor at all for practice?
No, we didn't. So I mean, we were, Moorhead's buddy towns with Fargo. So you think North Dakota State, they got a home. We played 2 blocks away from them, and we didn't have a dome. So
we looked across the river, and you're like, these guys, these people with silver spoons in their mouth over there with their dome and everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we actually ended up having some spring practices when I coached up there too. We practiced up there in the springtime because we practiced in the morning at 5 or 6 in the morning. In D2, you got to figure out your schedule somehow, and so we practiced up at NDSU a couple times. So it worked out well.
I have a question for you really quick. Do you like practicing in the morning as a coach, or even, did you do that as a player too, or what your experience with early morning practices?
I love it. I think waking up, accomplishing something right away, and then going to schoolwork kind of gets them focused and they're not sleeping through class and whatnot. I think that's important. And I also like it too. I'm a morning person myself. So waking up and going right into practice or, within 2 hours, I think is awesome. I think it could also lead to like longer days though, because you get in the office first and then all of a sudden you're game planning, and all of a sudden game planning typically has to end at a certain point of time.
Yeah.
It might start at 12 right after practice, then all of a sudden you're getting.
So you got to bring the players back in to watch tape, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably probably right before dinner usually or something. Yeah. And then you come back as a coach, because I've only had to do that once at UCLA. We did that schedule, and I was always, the days can creep up on you quickly.
Yeah. So our guys come back around 4, really depending on their class schedule. So
sure.
They can come, in intervals or whatever it is, but yeah, right around 4 or 5, and then you kind of get back into game planning and prepping for tomorrow's practice.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, speaking of Northwestern, obviously where you're at now, you had some great seasons in 2017, 2018, 2017, 2018, and then last year was a little bit of a down year. How are you guys going to bounce back next year?
It was a tough year last year. It was kind of one of those years, and I think anyone who coaches or who has coached or played football kind of experiences one of those years where it's nothing goes right.
Yeah.
Things just kind of aren't clicking. And, fortunately, we're excited about next year. We got a lot of guys coming back on defense, have a handful of guys coming back on offense with a lot of quality starts. And it was nice kind of just being back out with the guys now. You see how much bigger and faster they are. So we're all getting excited for this year to come, hopefully soon. But yeah, our guys are so committed. We have some great leadership leaders coming back too. So we're real excited about this coming year.
The new facility that was, I guess, when was that finally built? It's what, a $265 million facility, just state of the art, really impressive. I mean, the endowment that Northwestern has, again, very impressive school academically. And it's amazing with some of the, how hard it may be to get guys into school. That's not the same for, say, other programs. You don't have the same academic restrictions. To have the amount of success continuously is a testament to, obviously the longevity of the head coach you guys have there and just the program. But how important is it to have a facility like that really competes with any other program in the country?
Yeah, I mean, it really is huge. Obviously, it's nice for recruiting. I don't think that we use it as a recruiting pitch, but it is definitely an incentive for the players to come in and know that they have tremendous opportunity to kind of utilize that facility to the best of their abilities. And so it's nice going into work in it. There's no doubt about that. And it's nice that the guys get to work out in phenomenal facilities. So it's definitely a benefit. I definitely think it's helped us out in recruiting the last 2 years. As you'll see in the next couple of years, we've really done a great job of recruiting. And going into next season, we got some great depth into our defense, especially.
Do you have, this is out of curiosity, do you have an office that faces the lake?
So I don't. It actually, I do face the lake, but there is a wall in front of me. It's kind of, I'm kind of like in the defensive staff room.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Okay.
But our full staff room is right on the lake. Coach Fitz has got a big wraparound office, which is awesome. And then most of the coaches do have a lake view or a field view. So it's pretty awesome. Then if you go in the weight room, you're literally right on the lake. Once we get to some normalcy here, where we can have some visitors come out to practice, we can get you guys up.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, we appreciate that. So taking it back to 2017, you coached at pretty much every level before making your way to Northwestern. What was it like, coaching at those levels? And then your first year in Division I, you have one of Northwestern's best seasons of all time, and then you play in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool. I'd be naive to say that I had a huge factor in all those wins, but I was fortunate to be a part of it. There's no doubt about that. The biggest cultural shock that you have going into there from smaller schools is obviously the big time games. And we had 2 seasons with it was in very dramatic fashion. I think one of those seasons we had 3 overtime games in a row. And so the fan experience obviously is something that I'd never experienced before. I played smaller football and coached smaller football, and so that was definitely a culture shock. I think the biggest one that I had was that really hit me. We were playing in Lincoln against Nebraska, and we beat them in overtime. And I just remember in overtime, my headset, I'm down. I'm supposed to give personnels on the sideline. I literally could not hear the box talking my headphone. So a little bit of a shock there, but it's been awesome, and it's been really fun. And obviously the success has been warranted by our guys' hard work and determination to get there.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know that year was such a year of team of destiny, like you said, 3 straight overtime games, just unheard of in college football. But, the follow-up to that is obviously it's a top-down culture, from Coach Fitzgerald. I'm curious to know, do you have one story that kind of epitomizes who he is as a coach and a person?
One of the biggest things that I learned from him was actually in the second season when we won the Big Ten West, we struggled in the beginning of the year, and I think we lost the game, and we had that Monday morning team meeting. That's always going to address the team, and that meeting, I remember pretty vividly, where he called out, and he was pretty demanding, and rightfully so, as coaches get, and as you need to do. But the people that he called out were the leaders of the team and the guys that were actually performing. Our best player on defense, our best player on offense. And he even called out our coordinators in front of everybody. He called coaches out, and he would call them out and basically just say, I know what you can do. You need to start doing it. And it almost kind of everyone was kind of like, oh my God, what's happened. It's just kind of, he's really getting after everybody. 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, and everyone's smiling, everyone's excited, everyone's like super pumped up to go attack the day. And so I asked him about it one day, and he, how are you going to call out? Like, how do you call somebody out, and then all of a sudden 2 minutes later they're smiling and having a good old time with you and ready to go attack the day? And he basically just simply answered it. He said, every single one of those guys that I called out, they know that I care about them, and they know that I want them to absolutely succeed in whatever they're doing. So that gave me the ability to call them out. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I learned from Coach Fitz is really people really care about two things: results and relationships. And I think relationships kind of build results. I think whatever, if you're a boss, CEO, leader, or whoever it is, and you're doing an evaluation of your employees or your players, you're going to think about two things: results. Are they producing? Is their production level high? And then secondly, what are the relationships like? Are they nice to talk about? Are they cool? Are they fun to be around? Are they building me up, or are they bringing me down when I talk to them in the office? And I think Coach Fitz kind of balances those two things like tremendously in the office, out of the office, especially on the field. And so I think the way that he can kind of turn that switch on and off is really impressive.
Do you find, or in your opinion, his playing experience of being one of the premier college football players in his time and regarded as one of the better linebackers in Big Ten history, to now being one of the better, more successful coaches in Big Ten history, do you think those playing experiences help him reach players? Obviously I don't think it hurts him, but sometimes elite players have a hard time relating to people maybe who aren't at that level of athleticism. So I'm just kind of curious, how do you think he manages that?
Yeah, that's good. I think kind of like what you're saying, like just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're great at teaching it or coaching it. Yeah, I think it absolutely helps him. I think he's a great job, and he's not totally involved in the defense or totally involved in the offense. He's kind of goes back and forth. And my first 2 years I was on the sidelines, and what I realized about Coach Fitz is he's the busiest man on game day when the game is happening. I mean, he is going 180 miles per hour. He's talking to both offense and defense. He's talking to the refs. He's game managing like crazy. His ability to just kind of move around and adjust, everyone really respects it, so you want to learn from it. So I think it definitely helped him out as a great player, kind of turned into a great coach.
So you kind of talked about his perspective and how he, attacks his coaching role, but what about the player's perspective? What's one theme that you see that every player graduates from Northwestern always having ingrained in the back of their minds?
I mean, I think the thing that he always says, and I think he got it from Randy Walker, or maybe it's his own, I'm not sure, but you go as hard as you can, as long as you can. And that's kind of like the mantra that we kind of live by and that's the thing. You go as hard as you can, as long as you can, you really can't complain about it. That's it. Whatever you're going to do, just go as hard as you can, as long as you can, and that's obviously, just stay focused on it. And then attitude and investment are kind of the cornerstones of the program. And Coach Fitz talks about it. And if you have a great attitude and you're invested into the program, people are going to start to trust you. And that's it. If you're smiley, if you're fun to be around, and you're a hard worker, and you're committed to the team with great investment, people are going to start to trust you. And once you build trust in the team, you're going to have a successful team.
That sounds like an Adam Weber right there.
What I'm always blown away by is we always search for like these secret formulas or statements or quotes. And although a particular quote at the right time can really change a person's attitude or outlook, but realistically, the answers are really simple. Everything's really like attitude and effort. Attitude and effort. Just bring a good attitude, trust, and invest. And it's like it's simple things, but yet, we try to make it more complicated or harder than it has to be. So it's nice when coaches just keep it simple. And there's a reason why. I mean, Coach Fitz has been there now, 12 years or maybe 10 years, 12 years. I don't know how long.
Yeah.
But either way, and his whole entire staff there has been around for so long. So I'm kind of curious, Kevin, what are you thinking what the thought process is with the staff being there so long? How did you come across Northwestern? How did you kind of be able to find a spot on this, amazing staff that never leaves?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I probably shouldn't be here.
Don't say that. Yeah, don't say that. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna say that, and what I won't say is that I'm not lucky. I mean, I made my own luck. I think, when people say, like, they hear my story of how I got Northwestern, oh, dude, you're lucky. No, I'm not lucky. I'm not, and no one is. Whoever has a job, they're not lucky either. They got there for some reason, somehow, some way. Mm-hmm. And I started off at Robert Morris in Chicago, and as a GA, and as a coach. I mean, Chicagoland Showcase, what we had Northwestern Chicagoland, like basically our recruiting event that we have in the summer, where we, our camp for our guys that they get to work out and get evaluated by our coaches, and we get to teach them, certain things and whatnot. And 300 coaches from 100 teams come to that camp. And so an opportunity to go that first year when I was just out of college, and I met the director of football ops, Cody. And Cody, I got his email, and I just kind of stayed in his ear for 4 years. In reality, I would just always make an opportunity to come stop by practice. They had bowl practices, they had spring practices. I could always make those. I was recruiting when I was up in Moorhead. I recruited Chicago. Every time I was in spring recruiting, I recruited Chicago. I would just drive up to Evanston and say, hey, I'm going to come stop by for practice. So he just got to know me. And then one July, I think 5 years after I met him, or 4 years after I met him, he gave me a call, and they had an opportunity as a GA. So I jumped on it. Fortunately for me, the year before that, before the showcase, I wrote Fitz a letter 2 weeks before the showcase. And I just asked him, I said, hey, I want to be a head coach one day. Would love to pick your brain. Let me give you if I could steal 15 minutes of you on the phone, here's my number if you got some time. I sent that on a Thursday. He called me on Tuesday at like 7:30.
No way.
And so I talked to him, first time I ever talked to him. That was my way in. And then a week later, I went to the showcase. So I had something to say to him when I showcase. So I just walked straight up to him. Hey, I talked to you on the phone last week. Great meeting. I really appreciate it. He said one or two things, but he knew my face. He was able to put my face to the name. And then a year later, when Cody said he has an opportunity, Fitz called me, and I said, hey, I remember talking to you like a year ago or whatever. So that was kind of the way that I kind of got in. And then, once the opportunity came, I just jumped on it, and, I'm still here.
Thankfully, it was, back in, I don't know when that call was, 2016 or early 2017, where, you weren't getting as many of those toll-free calls, where, like, if you got a call from a random number, you probably were still answering it. Now we're all getting like 5 or 7 a day, and you're like, no, I'm just not going to answer a number I don't recognize.
I know. Actually, last month I got one of those, and I picked it up, and I was like, oh, they're like trying to sell my car or something, or doing something. And my wife's like, why do you pick those up? I was like, you never know who it is.
Right.
Always be somebody.
As the young and hungry coach, you pick up every single call that comes to your phone.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, but the follow-up that I wanted to ask is, you talked about staying in touch with the director of football operations. Mm-hmm. For some other people out there, you seem like a really outgoing guy, a guy that's open for reaching out to anybody and not really worrying about how you come off, or always ensuring that it's positive and relationship driven. Yeah. What are some of the things that you said to Cody, to maintain that relationship where, it wasn't awkward, it wasn't weird, but you're just trying to build a relationship and not, step over the line?
To start the relationship, it was kind of based off of like kind of single transactions of, hey, good luck at this game, good luck this weekend at your game, through an email, whatever it may be, or come down and see a spring practice, and all of a sudden I'm standing watching practice with them, and then we get in small talk, and then I take whatever we were talking about that time, and then a month later I'll try and just send an email like, hey, thanks for having me, or whatever. So it's really small talk. I think the term that either Cody might have used it when, after reflect on this, when I got the job, I think he said, you're professionally persistent, in a sense of, I might have been annoying, but I wasn't like a nuisance,
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, because like in any field, if a young and hungry guy and they're calling you or texting you on Friday afternoon in springtime, that it can get annoying regardless. So you just try and find that barrier of being professionally persistent in a way to where, they know that you want to be part of that program, but you have enough self-awareness to not annoy people about it.
Sure.
Kevin, I got a question. So, you applied this thoughtful approach to, keeping yourself relevant, getting in front of the right people, that decision makers on a program, right? So that if an opportunity does come around, you may have a shot at it, which again, congratulations to you. It didn't happen through accident, it happened through hard work. Have you kind of always been wired that way? Are there other instances where you were calling or emailing or sending messages to somebody what you wanted to get in front of? Can you think of other times, or was it always only pertains to football?
Well, that's like the one success story out of 100.
Yeah, we gotta give both sides to it so people don't think it's all grand slam every.
Yeah. I mean, as a young professional and trying to make it, for every 50 handwritten letters that I send, one person will get back, if that.
Surprising. Adam and I haven't gotten our handwritten letter yet, but that's okay. I guess once you get in at Northwestern, you don't need to write any handwritten letters anymore.
Right. So what one person told me when I was a first, actually before I got a GA job, he told me, he said, do whatever you feel that you have to do to get a GA job, and if you don't get a job in 6 months, you can sit back and say, you know what, I'm okay with it because I did everything I could to get a job. So that's kind of always stuck with me, where what do I have to do to get there? Who can I stalk on Twitter to try and find a DM, or who can I, write a letter to, all that stuff. It's just make sure at the end of the day, you can sit back and say, hey, I did the best I could.
Sure. Yeah. Story of our life too, trying to find, good interviews to come on the podcast. How many DMs can you send? No,
that's right.
Oh, Steve, how many handwritten letters have you written? That's why we gotta get out.
Well, we gotta look out. We're in the middle of a pandemic. You can't be sending handwritten letters.
Right, it's almost like anthrax in the mail now.
Yeah, seriously.
That's right.
No. So I mean, obviously, that paid off getting to Northwestern. But what I'm curious about is to Webb's point, what he said earlier about how people get there and they stay there. I'm curious to know, what's the reason for that? Why don't people leave Northwestern when they get there?
I mean, I think there's a lot of factors. I think probably the biggest factor is probably Coach Fitz. Coach Fitz does a great job of creating an environment where people want to be part of it, which in this industry, unfortunately, it's probably not as common for that to happen. You also have the city of Chicago.
Pretty dope city.
Yeah, great city. I mean, you could do anything here. And I think the school too. I mean, the school in general, it's one of the best schools in the country. So you can't really complain.
Yeah, I've always been impressed. I remember hearing a stat when I first got into coaching. It was something, and I know this probably is more of a generalization, but 2 to 2.5 years is like the average stint for a college coach at a university before they either leave or get fired. And so it's just amazing to know that. I want to say most people on that staff, 9-10 years, right along with Coach Fitz, that have been there, 12 years. Once they kind of are there, it's in an environment that not only is winning football, but you have, like you said, great kids, but you also have an environment that's great for coaches and their families. And, it really is, unfortunately, the anomaly in our business, or in that business. And I hope that people see that it can be done a different way. And obviously Coach Fitz is showing it day in and day out. But again, I'm very happy that you're there, because it's an awesome opportunity for you.
Yeah. And I think deep down, every coach who wants to be a head coach or is a head coach wants that. I think they want some continuity throughout the staff, and they want something to where people feel like they can grow and keep growing and keep getting better where they're at. And not everyone's bound to be a coach. Like we had a coach who Coach Fitz mentored, and he's now the head coach at UC Illinois, and he moved on and he moved to a greener pasture for him. So I think every coach wants a culture to be where we want to be for a long period of time, but it's just unfortunate that it turns into that way. That's just the way the culture of college football is. That there really is a 2.5 year turnover margin. So yeah, I'm fortunate, and I'm happy to be where I'm at.
And you're at that point, 2.5 years that at their respective school. You're going into your third year, but you obviously got promoted from a GA to a QC. I'm curious to know what in your role changed from that promotion.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably ask 10 QCs the same question, and we'd probably give you the answer, all different answers of what our exact role is. Like it's a position that's like, I feel like it's like a made up position almost. As simple as it sounds, like quality control, like in some sense, like it is my job to make sure we are having quality time at practice and in the meeting room. And it's almost like I want to make sure that we're efficient as possible. And if that's, stuff with the playbook or stuff with, thinking outside of the box ideas for practice of, what we can do for individual drills. Obviously data is a very big thing, which is big for a GA too. But I think one of the biggest things that I try and do in the off season is trying to think about things that we need or we could get better at, that the coaches aren't necessarily looking at. So that's studying NFL tape, studying Big Ten tape, studying other conferences tape, and trying to find little nuggets and making a cut up and then giving it to the DC, and then we watch it as a staff. And so those things I think are really what make my role, is trying to make sure that you're always thinking ahead. You're always trying to find new ways to improve. And so in that sense, it's been really good for me because I'm trying to expand my mind as much as possible that I'm not used to. Typically I just have a position group. I just think about the position group. How are we going to get better? What are we going to do? I work with the linebackers. I assist the linebackers, but I just got to make sure that we're as efficient as possible in certain ways. And so trying to manage that and then trying to find new things to do, I think is really what my role turned into.
And obviously those guys that you're coaching are super intelligent. There's obviously criteria that it takes to get to Northwestern and be able to be a student athlete there. So how do you define like an intelligent football player? And they might be an intelligent student, but like how does that translate to being an intelligent football player?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's there, Kevin. You'll
celebrate success.
That head won't be fit the screen here in a little bit.
I think to describe an intelligent football player is really just a football player who takes ownership in what they're doing. I kind of get this. We've gotten the question before: is, oh, you're Northwestern, you have really smart players, so you can give them a bunch of stuff to do. Yeah, our defense can be complex at certain points in the season and whatnot, but in reality, they just take ownership. And so when they take ownership, they feel like it's theirs. And if this complex strategy is going to help them succeed and win on Saturday, then they're going to own it, want to learn it, and take it and practice it and get better at it.
Kevin, I've always liked this, where it kind of similar to what you said is, these people are, pre-med and neuroscience and whatever these, whatever it may be, just even in the most basic of undergrads that a person at Northwestern can pursue. It's like smart people jump off sides too. You know what I mean? Just because you're incredibly smart and have a 36, SAT or ACT does not mean ACT doesn't mean these tests are obsolete now. We could hold another conversation, but it doesn't mean like you know how to hit somebody, or it doesn't mean you know how to jump off sides when you're playing, like you said, in Lincoln, Nebraska, in overtime. Like, I don't care how smart you are, you better be a freaking good football player who's practiced and been, so I kind of was disagreeing with what you said and just rambled on.
Yeah, no, that's true too. Like, sometimes you see like some players that are, I don't want to say too smart, but sometimes they can get too analytical.
Sure. Oh, of course.
Almost like perfectionist. Stop thinking. It's our job to think, right? You take ownership in your own duty, do your job, and we'll do ours. You just go play football,
And when you say they're very analytical, what does that mean, from obviously you're a defensive coach? What does being, overanalyzing or being analytical from a defensive side of the ball mean?
Yeah, I mean, it could really be anything from like, I honestly, myself and the graduate assistants that I work with, it's our job to find the nuts and bolts of the opposing offense and try and find those key things, that the tendencies that really can set our guys off of a certain route or a certain place coming. And we don't want to overflow their brain with all that information. We want to overflow their brain with 1% of that information. So when they see this particular thing, they get that. So, you have a guy who likes the information that we have, and all of a sudden he's thinking about this thing, and he's thinking about where this guy's lined up, and then he motions here, and all of a sudden now he's not thinking about playing football. And so, we have an analytics department too who helps us out with tendencies and whatnot, and all that stuff is really good, and it's really great for us coaches, and we have to be protective of how we give that to our players. Because if you give that all that information to our players, all of a sudden they're thinking about way too much.
Kevin, that's a great point, because what people have to remember is the offense is scouting your defense as well. They do self-scout just like a defense will do self-scout. You see that, hey, in all third downs in this particular part of the field, and it's, from 4 to 6 yards, we're playing quarters consistently. Or if we bring pressure, it's either, it's a field pressure and we play cover one behind it, whatever it is. People pick up on that too. So as much as, again, you want to give a player these keys, you also have to realize, like, hey, they're on scholarship too. They're studying us too. They may have a nice little double move set up here. So again, I think it's a good point that other coaches should keep in mind is, again, it's be careful with the information you give, coach off of your consistent message and your consistent fundamentals. And then kind of depending on who you have, you can you can disseminate information depending on, the player and situation.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of it has to be with who the player is too. Some people can handle some information. Some people just want to play freely and not even worry about it.
And obviously being at Northwestern, one of the more intelligent schools out there, do you guys have something that's, I know you touched about you have an analytics department, but how in depth did you guys go?
Yeah, we can go in depth for sure. The head of our analytics, Andrew Kenny, does a great job of, and really it's at the discretion of the coach. He'll give us stuff each week. He'll give the offense something, and he'll give the defense something every Monday. And then we can expand on that as we want or as we will. A lot of that also has to deal with game management. And so, he can break down certain things of when you should take a timeout, when you shouldn't take a timeout, when you should blitz or,
Isn't it amazing we still have discussions of when you should take a timeout and not take a timeout? It's like the game. I know there's just different situations pop up all the time, but everyone has a different chart. It's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it is nuts. And I'm not a numbers guy at all. And so I'm not super, super focused on it. But I understand that's data, and it's really quality data. And data tells you something. And so if you can actually realize that and take that for what it is, it can help you in your game planning and certain tendencies. And I think it's important, and it's an important piece of the game now. And I think the direction is, I feel like most coordinators and head coaches are going to start leaning that way and start looking at some of that data. I know, John Harbaugh was big into it, I think, or something like that, and some NFL coaches. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's only going to get bigger and better.
Yeah, I've seen that in the college level, especially in the NFL level, though, that coaches and staffs have a person, I don't know if they're up in the booth, I would assume they are, and their only responsibility is talking to the head coach or whoever is making decisions on the field, those game time decisions, and talking them through, taking a field goal here, going for 2 here, this is the time to take a timeout. This is what and because there's so much, like you said, with Coach Fitz going up and down, to then be on top of time management, ball management, timeouts in the game situation. There's just so much at play that now people have another role, and that's that person who kind of tracks all that stuff, because it is so important to the game. It can come down to wins and losses by taking a timeout, not taking a timeout.
Yeah, that's the thing you don't think about too, is it's extremely important, because the game management piece is, that can literally determine a win or a loss with 2 minutes left in the game or 10 seconds left in the game. And if you have at least some data in your mind or in your knowledge or in a book on the sideline or someone speaking in your ear, that's going to be a benefit to your team, and you're going to do whatever you can to get information to your team to make sure the best call possible.
And just with that, and I know you feel the same way, and we've kind of already hit on it, but a phrase that I've always liked is there can be paralysis by overanalysis. And there's that fine line of balancing between that, because you can become frozen not only as a coach, but as a player as well, if you are, again, thinking too much instead of just playing and reacting.
Yeah. So, and football is an emotional sport, and oftentimes data doesn't correlate with emotion.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing you got to think about too,
Sure. All right. So switching gears a little bit away from Northwestern, we have a couple questions left, if that's all right. It's obviously, we talked about your path to get to Northwestern, and you've coached at various levels. I'm curious to know what's been the hardest level to coach at?
They're all hard. Yeah, I think they're all hard. Honestly, I think the hardest time that I had was when I was my first job after a graduate assistant, when I went back up to Moorhead, and the head coach told me that I was going to coach the defensive backs and the punt team. I've never been on punt, and I never played defensive backs. And I said, cool, let's do it. Let's try it out. So that was probably the hardest time that I had, because I had no idea.
Imagine first day of practice, you get there, they're like, do you know what you're doing? No.
Yeah, they don't need to know that. The players don't need to know that. But by all accounts, I mean, you're coming out there like you own the place, I'm sure.
Right. So that was probably the hardest time that I had. But as far as like levels go, I mean, I think it's all relative to kind of how you look at it, and they all have certain challenges. Either way, obviously, you have more resources at a Division I level. So, it just really just depends on kind of the team and the players and kind of where you're at in that situation.
So would you say, again, at Moorhead, that's that first time where you probably felt, truly maybe out of your element, or not, maybe that's not the right word, because you're a football coach, but you're having to coach up on something that, again, you have very little to no experience with. Have you felt that at other levels as well? Or I guess as you progress, have you kind of just picked up what you need to do, like after that first experience? Like, after this, I know I got to call these people, get these type of drill tape, and then I can kind of go on the fly? Or kind of how would you tell a young coach to handle a situation like that?
Being thrown in the ringer like that, like, really kind of shows you, how willing you are to learn your information. I mean, I got the job in July, and I don't even know what punt is, So I got the job in July, and I had to figure out punt protection, which is like the most dangerous thing in football, and defensive backs, which is arguably one of the hardest jobs to coach. So it's tough, but being thrown in the ring, and I know why he did that, because he trusted me, because he knew who I was, and he knew I'd do a fine job at it.
Yep.
Well, I was terrible at it my first year.
Don't say that.
But yeah, I mean, you got to call your people. You got to find people. You got to search on the internet, try and just dig and claw to try to find information about what you're about to do.
It's so funny, because it's just like, even in coaching football, as an example, like, you're doing what everybody does in corporate America.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck I'm doing. All right, well, I'm just going to Google it and figure it out, and then I'm just going to act like I know what I'm talking about when I'm presenting it to everybody.
Yeah, I remember actually I talked to that's Coach Lockway up there at Moorhead, and I talked to him quite a bit, and I talked to him, I don't know, a month ago, and I said, Coach, I apologize. I mean, I was the worst defensive back coach. And like, we really were, though. Like, we were, I don't know how many D2 schools there are. Like, we were like bottom 5 in defense. Like, it was bad.
We're going to have to cut all this out. We don't want you,
No, that's fine.
Throwing yourself under the bus here.
No, that's fine, because now I realized how bad I was and how much more I know now, but in 5 years from now, I'm going to say, God, I didn't know anything when I was 30 years old,
That's a good sign of a person with a learner, a grower's mentality.
And he said the same thing back to me, as, well, don't feel bad, because I was the worst head coach in the country too. So, so we had a good laugh about that. But yeah, you just got to find ways to try and learn. And when you get thrown in things, that's kind of really the best way to learn, honestly.
From coaching at all those levels, some are of the belief, get to the highest level you can get to and stay there. Are you of that same belief, or would you be open to going back to Division II or NAIA or whatever it might be?
I've always said I want to be a head coach somewhere, so I'm not itching to be a head coach right now. I think whenever that time has come, if that's 40 years from now, if it's at a Division I school in 15 years, cool. If it's at a Division III school in 10 years, that's cool. If it's in a year from now at a smaller school, that's cool too. Not that I'm going to take it or not. I think everyone has a different journey, and whatever that journey is, I'm here for it. So I would like to just keep coaching football, man. I want to coach football and I want to have a happy family. So whatever that is in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, whatever that is, I'm game.
When it comes to your own personal growth, are there any particular books or podcasts or any mentors out there that have kind of influenced or shaped maybe where you are, maybe how your mindset's going into this year? Is there anything that you're trying to apply that you've learned in the last year?
I think probably the one that's had the biggest impact on me that I've learned, and really, like Simon Sinek, like, he wrote the book Start With Why and then Leaders Eat Last. And it's like his talks, and like, he's got his own podcast. He's really good. I think the way he articulates his information is really good. I've read this book. I'm kind of going through it right now, actually. It's called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Yeah. Stoicism, right?
Stoicism. Yeah. And that book has probably been the most impactful book. Maybe it's just because that's what it's been, maybe it's just hit me at the right time or whatnot. That book's been really good. But, I listen to podcasts all the time. So, any type of podcasting, man, I'm listening to it. But that book right now has been probably the biggest thing. And one piece that kind of hit me the other day, as you hit me up about this podcast, kind of just thinking about the journey, was he mentioned something obviously about dropping your ego. And he said that your job is to clear the path for the people that are above you. And eventually you'll clear your path for yourself. And I think that goes along with my role quite a bit, and really everyone's role, regardless of football or position or business or whatever it is. Like, I think we all want to get to that next position or that next job. But in reality, if I'm a coordinator, it's my job to give the information and clear the path for the head coach for him to make quality decisions about his program. If I'm an assistant coach, it's my job to clear the path for the coordinator to make sure that he has the ability to call the right plays. Yeah. A GA, or if I'm a QC, it's my job to clear the path for the assistant coach so that they can coach their players to the best of their ability. And if you do that, if you help that person out, it'll eventually clear the path for you. And so that's kind of really stuck with me. And I think he calls that the canvas strategy, which makes sense. And that's kind of what's been on my mind recently.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's great. I've heard about it. It's popped up in many a podcast, and it's one of those books that I think many should read, especially like you said in these trying times. It's probably good to have some stoicism and practice some stoicism.
Exactly.
Well, again, thanks for being on. But lastly, is there any way, like your social media handle, people where they can follow you? How can they, keep up with Northwestern football, follow your journey? What's your Twitter? What's your IG? All that stuff.
My Twitter is Coach Koch, and that's Cook, Bill. It's not however you pronounce it.
I love when you can tell you're just, you're a good dude when you have to actually like look at your phone to actually see what your handle is. Like, I'm just so not about that world, which I just love. It's very refreshing to see that.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in that stuff.
Right. But yeah, man, I appreciate you guys having me on. I like what you guys are doing. So if there's anything that I could help you guys in any way of reaching out to some other people or making some connections, yeah, feel free. I'll be happy to pass the word on.
And again, awesome story. You're there for a reason, and thanks for sharing your story, sharing it with our listeners, sharing it with us. It's really cool and very motivating. So thank you very much, and wish you the best. I hope we can watch you guys coaching football this year, and all the best to Northwestern.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
It's more than a feeling. No, it's something I believe in. You light up the night, yeah. You light up the night. You got the sun in your eyes.